And if I do it, God promised to open the window of heaven. And if I'm constantly giving, then it is up to God to constantly replenish.
Greetings, y'all, and welcome to See Things Above TV. I'm your host, Lou Ciccone. So today we're taking a quick look at this clip from Bishop Winans, man, where he talks about tithing and basically reveals that his view of tithing is a prosperity gospel view of tithing. So we're going to get into that in a second, man. If y'all like content like this, y'all know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe. Ring the bell for notifications. Without further ado, man, let's dive right into this clip.
I remember, because we didn't have good spending habits, I looked up and had an electric bill and tithes. I paid my tithes because all the electric company was going to do was say thank you and here's your next month bill. The postal workers was going to bring that to me without fail. Rain, sleet, they know the creed. But if I gave to God, God said, if you give, then I'll give back to you.
So notice he says that God said that if you give, then God will give back to you. So this is a very faulty motivation for somebody to be giving in church in the first place. We don't give so that we can get from God. God has already given us everything that we have, everything that we need, and everything that we have. He has already blessed us with those things and will continue to bless us with those things. As the scriptures say, look at the birds of the air. Do you not think that you're of greater value than those things? Your Father knows what you have need of before you even ask for it. So God will supply all our needs according to his riches in glory, right? He's going to supply for all our needs, but we don't give in a way that we're trying to manipulate God and get him to give back to us. That is the faulty premise that the prosperity gospel will teach you, where people are now convinced that if they give a certain amount and if they give more, the more they give is kind of like they're investing more into the blessings that they're going to receive on the tail end. So it's a very faulty idea that this is why we should be giving at all. Notice how he says instead of paying his electric bill, he decides to tithe instead. And again, the idea behind this is that if he gives to the church, then God is going to give him back. And this idea, man, is really drawn a lot of times from Mark chapter 12, and it's the story of the widow giving her last. So let's actually listen to Pastor John MacArthur talk about this, and then we'll come back on the other end.
The prosperity gospel is more morally reprehensible than a Las Vegas casino because it masquerades as religion. They take your money in Las Vegas, but you expect it. Because it's run by the mafia. You don't expect the people that represent God to do the same thing. And when Jesus saw the widow put her last mite into the temple offering, he said, this temple is going to come down. Not one stone will be left on another. I don't know what you have been taught about that story of the widow giving her last 2 cents. That was not an example of Christian giving. God doesn't expect you to give your last 2 cents and go home and die. That's what happens to a widow who is suckered by a religion of works. She was trying to buy with her last 2 cents her way into the kingdom because that's what she'd been taught. And Jesus says any system that sucks people down to the place where they have nothing left in a false hope is coming down.
So the passage being referenced here is Mark chapter 12, and I'm actually going to start it from verse 38 because it's important for us to get the context here. So in verse 38, it says, and in his teaching, he said, and this is Jesus, of course, and in his teaching, he said, beware of the scribes, who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in the marketplaces and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. Make a mental note of verse 4, who devour widows' houses. Verse 40, rather. So verse 41, and he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. So this passage is often taught to us as though what the object lesson in this passage is that we should just give everything that we have to the church, and that should be our general mode of practice when it comes to giving. That is a false breakdown of what is happening here, and that is a false lesson to draw from here. Jesus is not creating or illustrating a template for us to or how we should be giving. That is not what's happening in the passage. Instead, it's actually an indictment on those who have, first of all, created this religious system that causes people to give all their money, and then it's also comparing and saying that, look, this woman gave everything that she have, even though it looks like it's a little, but she gave everything, whereas people who have more gave less, but in actuality, she's the one who's given more. So that's all that Jesus is saying in here. So it's not Jesus teaching us to draw the principles of giving from this passage, but oftentimes you see that happening, and it's actually interesting to say that the bishop here is teaching his congregation to do so. And, you know, who does that benefit in the end, right? Who does it actually benefit in the end if the bishop is asking his congregation or promoting the idea of them not paying their bills and rather them giving to the church? Obviously, it benefits the church more than it benefits the givers.
God is okay with commerce. What amazes me, and I've told you the story, when we first started, we had a man get up we had testimony service. Yeah, Elder Healy was over that service. And the man went to talking, and I was, when service started, I would leave and I would come back, and he was over, and the man went to talking and saying, we don't need to pay tithes, and we don't need to, give like offerings, and we don't need to sell chicken dinners, because God will send somebody here that's rich and they'll pay all the bills. That man kept on talking till I just walked down that center aisle. That's all I'm gonna say. For the rest of the story, you could see Elder Healy. I got up, I told him, I said, don't you ever stand up in this church and say nothing like that no more. Don't you ever do that. We're gonna tithe because that's what God said. And if I do it, God promised to open the window of heaven. Y'all ain't got to say nothing. Pour you out a blessing. You won't have room enough to receive. A liberal heart means that I'm constantly giving. And if I'm constantly giving, then it is up to God to constantly replenish. Some of my best years have been when the economy was turned upside down. Because when you give, you're not victim of this country's economy, because God sends the rain.
So this mentality of God being on the hook to give you back what you give, and this being the motivation for giving, is just pervasive in these circles, and it's obviously the central thing from where the bishop is drawing all of his ideas from about giving. And this is not giving as in New Testament giving, where it is giving from a cheerful heart. It is giving out of all of the good things that God has done for us, and just an outpouring of that. This is giving to manipulate God to do things for you, and wrongly using Malachi 3:10, as most of the prosperity preachers do. You see, this kind of thinking leads to, it's a doorway, man. It's a gateway to people to get sucked into now the seed giving heresy stuff. You know what I'm saying? Where you get drawn into this idea that if I give a seed, then God is expected to return a certain amount to me based on the monetary value of that seed. At any point, if you start thinking that giving is about God doing stuff for you, then you are susceptible to this sort of to all kinds, rather, of heresy and unhealthy ways of viewing giving that could be absolutely detrimental to your spiritual health and cause you to make a lot of terrible decisions that you are later going to regret. Just because this guy that came forward had a messed up view on tithing, on giving, does not mean that the bishop now has the license to now tell people this false teaching on tithing and give these people the wrong idea of why they should be giving. We are absolutely exhorted to give in the church, and we should be givers. We should give out of from a cheerful heart, a cheerful disposition, and giving because we want to see our elders and people in the church being taken care of. We want the church to be able to support missionaries. There's so many reasons why we should give to the church, okay? Like, you shouldn't need to have this really broken down to you as a Christian if you're somebody who's a member of a church, as you should be, and enjoying the benefits of being in a local fellowship. Like, you should have a desire to want to give. But what happens is, in these spaces, like in the settings where you have, preachers like Bishop Winans here teaching about tithing, they're teaching people an unhealthy view, which in the end, actually bankrupts the people who are giving. And ironically, you end up with the story of the widow giving her last, and that is now being celebrated instead of that being looked at in its fullness, in its proper context, where we need to be telling people who are controlling these sort of religious ideas that that's not how God has mandated that we should be giving or has commanded us in the New Testament. And so, man, much more can be said about this, man, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I would love to hear from y'all. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And if then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth, all right? God bless y'all, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.